Hello, world. It's good to be back with you. Welcome to the Ken Simmons Show. And for Area 58, I'm Ken Simmons. Good to be with you. Always good to be with you, because if I'm not with you, I'm home alone. That's not good either. I got a few things I'd like to say before I meet my guest. I got a great guest. He's new in town. Be kind to him. He's a nice guy, I think. We're going to find out. I got a few things I'd like to say. Number one, we're coming up to election. It's at the end of April. Last year, we had a turnout of 8%. You know, that's if 100 people voted, if 100 people are eligible to vote, that means 8 people voted. 8. Now, let's assume, I don't know, let's assume that Carver's got 5,000 eligible voters. If 8% vote again, that means 400 people voted. But 4,600 people did not vote. Now, don't sit out there and tell me that your one vote don't count. Because if you do, you got to tell me 4,600 votes don't count. And that just is not true. What's the matter with you? You're adults. This is your Constitution-given right. This is your duty. On the other hand, from some people I talk to, maybe everybody should not vote. Maybe they just don't have, I wouldn't want that either. But I will say this. I don't care who you are. I don't care what education you got. I don't care what your intelligence quotient is. Please, get out there and vote. We need you to choose our leaders. That's what you're doing, you know. Please get out there and vote. Okay, enough of my ranting and raving. I want to tell you one more thing. When I was a kid, and that's a long time ago, in Randolph, on Warren Street where I lived, 60% of that street didn't have indoor toilets. Also, there were no supermarkets around in those days. You went to a little local store run by Harry Conrad, happened to be the name of my grocer, and he was behind the counter and you pointed out what you wanted. And he'd pick it off the shelf. He had this long handle picker that he'd pick from the top shelves. He'd pile it all up here, put it in a bag, total it up on the bag, no register, total it up. You owe me $13.65. We can forget the 65 cents if you've got a dollar bill, because I can't change it anyway. That's the way business was done in those days. We had to be radio. We had no telephone. Yeah, it's true. Somebody gave us a Philco radio. And my mother used to take it off the dining room table and bring it up to my bedroom if I was sick. And she let me listen to all the soap operas. Ma Perkins, Helen Trent, Backstage Wife, Just Plain Bill, Dick Tracy, Terry and the Pirates. That's the way it was when I was a kid. And, oh, by the way, if you wanted to run your gas stove, you had to go run downstairs and put a quarter in the gas meter. I swear to God. You had to put a quarter in the gas meter so you got 25 cents worth of gas. And when it ran out, it ran out. My father devised a trick whereby he would take the quarter and tie a slim thread around it and drop it down and then pull it back up. I think that was dishonest, but he seemed to get away with it. Of course, my father was an awful drinker, too. All right, that's enough of my fooling around, enough of my diddle-daddle. We're going to meet my guest, and we're going to get serious with him. I want you to pay close attention, because he's got something important to tell you, to tell all of us. So take off your shoes, pour yourself your favorite drink. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back, and I'm glad to be back. Repeat one more time. Be a pain in the neck. Vote. it's almost upon us. By the time this shows, by the time this is on the air, hopefully it won't be next year, but by the time it's on the air, it'll be voting time. You got to vote. You got to vote. It's your duty. It's a citizen. You're a citizen of this country. It's the least you can do, isn't it? I think that. I feel that way. I feel that way. All right, introduce you to my guest. He's kind of a new man in town. What little I know of him, he seems like a pretty nice guy. He does work in the town hall, and that's okay too. There's a lot of nice people work in the town hall. We're going to get to know him a little bit. So if you just sit back, relax. And by the way, if you've got any questions about this guy, you know our phone number, 508-866-1019. We'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. And if any questions are directed to him, we'll see that he gets them. So bear that in mind now. This is not some fluffy thing. This is very serious. So I want you to meet my newfound friend, the new town planner, Steve
Cole.
Steve Cole.
C-O-L-E. Very nice to meet you, Ken. Thanks so much for inviting me on.
I had some very good friends by the name of Cole.
Oh, is that so?
Edgar B. Cole, Tom Cole. Any relation?
No, they don't owe you money, do they? You're not going to ask me for what they owe you?
Where were you born?
I was born in Dorchester, Boston, Mass.
Jeez. One of my favorite places.
Yeah?
Oh, I love Dorchester.
So
I still
Savin
do.
Hill is my my neighborhood of
My
origin.
mother was born in Savin Hill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Irish woman, I'm guessing?
No,
No?
Jewish.
Jewish woman?
Jewish woman.
No
Yeah.
kidding.
Yep.
Now, where did they relocate to when they left Boston?
Where they lived, you mean? The address? I have no idea.
Okay.
You know, at my age, I forget a lot of stuff. I try to remember the big stuff, like go to the bathroom, that kind of thing.
Voting.
Voting? Voting? Good for you. When did you move out of Dorchester, and where did you move to?
Ooh, let's see. I have to say that my life has so far been kind of truncated into thirds. So I spent the first
Okay.
third of my life in the city. The subsequent third was spent on Cape Cod, where I also graduated high school at Nauset Regional. And then the latter third, all but for the last, say, 2 years or so, has been spent in Western Mass in Connecticut.
Western Mass, up around Springfield and Amherst?
Precisely, yep. Actually, I went to college at Westfield State, then college, now university. And my career actually started in Springfield during the control board years. When
Is there a curriculum in college for town planners as such?
You know, at the time that I was going through my college experience, my undergraduate experience particularly, they did have programs like geography, regional planning, planning in general.
Really?
I didn't necessarily. I took some courses, but it wasn't the career track that I thought I'd end up in.
Okay.
In fact, I studied international relations and comparative foreign policy. And so taking some of those macro critical thinking skills that I've learned in my undergraduate and my master's program, I've been able to apply them on a local level. And Carver is somewhat unique in what my career has been, but it's also in line with what I've studied in my career, in my academic pursuits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Post-grad, where'd you go post-grad? Did you do post-grad?
I did, yes, I did. I went to Trinity College in Hartford, graduated in 2012, I think it was, with a master's degree in public policy and law, they call it.
That's a great school.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, oddly, Evan DeBell, with whom I became familiar only after the fact, he was president of both colleges, Westfield State and Trinity.
Now, you seem very young. That's none of my business. I don't care to know your age, but are you going for your doctorate? Is that a possibility?
You know, I have thought about it, maybe a law school degree. I think that if I were to go back to school for professional enrichment, it might be in some kind of an architecture field.
For professional enrichment? Yeah.
Yeah, and,
Okay.
and for personal pursuits, I've always been a student of history. And so if I were to go back to school for a degree conferring program, it might be for one of those things, history or
You know,
architecture.
I have a friend in Randolph. He's much younger than I am, so we're not social friends, but we used to do a TV show together there. And his major was archaeology, and when he got out, he decided he didn't like that anymore because he got dirt under his fingernails. So he went back to school to become a historical, architectural historian. Is that correct to
Interesting.
say that?
Well, I suppose.
And
Studying
so
the history of architecture and its evolution.
we did the whole history of Randolph with his knowledge and me kibitzing on the side, and it met with rave reviews over there. The people just simply loved it. If you're doing nothing and you've got your cell phone out or your computer, go do YouTube and go to Beneath the Elms with Ken Simmons, and I think you'll see some very interesting shows there. By the way, you'll see some very interesting shows if you go on the air with Ken Simmons here in Carver, too. Married?
No, not married. No.
Children?
No children. I am a faithful uncle. I have several nieces and nephews that demand a great deal of my time. And for now, that satisfies that.
My son enjoys life as an uncle. He doesn't have any children. He's been married 25 years. He doesn't have any children, but he loves his nieces and nephews, and they go crazy over him. So you're in an envious position because you can love them and leave them. Which is great.
I get them worked up, and then I do leave out the back door. It's a bit of a prolonged Irish exit, if you will.
Are you do you live in Carver now?
I do. Yeah, I live in Carver. I have friends and family who are from Carver, and so I was familiar with the town a little bit before I sought the position here. And in fact, back in high school, I remember running on the track that we're in the midst right now of discussing replacing.
Right here in
yeah,
Carver?
It was. We had a dual meet. It was actually, it wasn't a dual meet. I think it was a regional meet, as I'm recalling. But Carver was a school that I was very familiar with even back when I was in high school.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So you weren't a total stranger when you moved here.
Well, there's always a lot to learn.
Yeah.
And no one ever wants to come in being the new guy with all these great ideas on how to fix or change things. But it was nonetheless a community that I was endeared to early on.
Now, I started new jobs in my time. I was a hairdresser most of my life, and did very well at it, and enjoyed every minute of it. I always say I never worked a day in my life. But when you go to a new salon or get a new group, like the first time I did Ava Gabor. Do you remember Ava Gabor?
I know the name.
She did Green Acres. You're too young for that.
Okay, yeah.
She did a lot of other stuff too. And I did her hair because she got into the wig business, and we did shows at the Copa and all over the world and that kind of, and so that got to be a little nerve-wracking. So my question is, are you nerve-wracked when you moved here and started your new job? Was it kind of a little, because there's so much to learn and so much to know and so much politics to play?
Well, I'm going to get into that, but first I'm interested to know, are you still active in styling and cutting hair?
If there's a lady that's, how shall I put this? I have to be very, very careful.
Okay, so you're like
at
the
my
Zohan is
age,
what I'm guessing.
I live alone. I like to date.
Okay.
And so I will swap very often a hairdo for a dinner.
Okay.
And that seems to work out pretty good. But most of the women that I date look me right in the eye and say, you can have a steak and that's it. I say, what does that mean? We won't go into that because we've only got a minute left.
Okay.
We've been talking to Stephen Cole, the new town planner. I find him a very charming guy, very gracious. And I was afraid he couldn't talk. Gosh, you can't stop him. Well, we're going to come right back and we're going to get deeper into what he does for a living. And I want to know the job description for town planner. He's going to tell me that. He's going to tell you that. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Ah, nothing like a little nap to come back refreshed. I'm back here with Stephen Cole, the new town planner. Stephen, tell me the job description for a town planner.
Well, typically, I'd say that in most communities, every community perhaps even in the Commonwealth, the planner is largely charged with the responsibility for managing the growth of the town, to make sure it's happening in a way that is characteristic to our values, and somewhat incumbent upon preparing the town for future growth. You don't want to put something that's, say, an industrial use in the middle of a residential neighborhood, right? I apply an economic development perspective to my planning. My master's degree we were chatting about before the break is in public policy and law. And so it's important for me to make sure that anything that we're doing is good public policy. Good zoning is good public policy. As an administrator of my department, it's also incumbent upon me to make sure that we're managing the budget in an effective and meaningful way. The budget is a statement of good public policy, or it should be anyhow. It defines for the public what your values are and what your spending priorities are. And so as a planning department, we also oversee, it's a consolidated department. It has elements of Conservation Commission. The Board of Public Health is, of course, the agent is part of our department. The building commissioner is part of our department as well.
I didn't realize that.
Yep, it's actually it's similar in size or similar in design to what you might see in other cities and towns. Previous to coming to Carver, I was in Saugus. Prior to that, I was in Hartford, and then also in Springfield.
Were you town planner there?
Well, so actually, it was an economic development function there. They were separated. They were bifurcated. Here in Carver, it makes some sense to have them connected or in some kind of a relationship together. They're not so dissimilar, in fact. But
Now, did you connect them, or were they connected when you got here?
they were like this before I got here, but it is similar, in fact, to what I worked on while I was in Springfield. And what we had hoped to achieve was create a one-stop shop. So anyone who was interested in either doing an alteration to their home or bringing a brand new business or a corporation into the community, they knew to come to us. And we managed the planning functions, the permitting functions, the economic development and tax and finance functions.
May I stop you for just
Yes,
a
you
moment?
certainly may.
Now, so if somebody wants to come into town with a new business, they go to you first?
It would be recommended. They may want to go to other departments. Some folks will go to the assessors first because they want to know what the tax implication might be for
Okay.
their business,
Yeah.
how they might be taxed.
Yeah.
As
Do
Wakefield
you have the power to say yay or nay
on
on whether or not they can have a business in town?
Well, so much of that is determined by what the zoning says and what subdivision rules and regulations are and the town
course,
charter. There's also state laws.
Yep.
So much of what we do on our side is informed by other regulatory authorities or agencies. I sometimes get some flack for this, but the truth is we're not necessarily decision makers at my ends. You have the politicians who are elected to certain boards and commissions.
Okay.
And with the planning board, those folks are the decision maker. I'm the administrator to help them make the best decision possible
I was
for
just
the
going to
town.
say, you don't make the decision, but you help them
Correct.
to make the,
Right.
to be as well informed as they can to make their decision.
Right, right. Now, there might be a good business use that because of the way the zoning is written, maybe the setbacks aren't necessarily proper for that particular use. The planning boards, zoning board of appeals, they can relax some of those provisions and allow for the business use to come in or the land use to happen in a way that is, again, consistent with the characteristic of our town and incumbent upon our growth trajectory so that future generations aren't dealing with mistakes that we've made. And I just want to say, too, that so much of my career in the past, these post-industrial, inelastic cities like, say, Springfield and Hartford, I don't necessarily know if I'm digging down 8 inches or 18 inches before I hit something like train tracks, oil
Okay.
drums,
Yeah.
Jimmy Hoffa. We genuinely sometimes don't know what's under the dirt in some of these older cities.
Absolutely.
And so, that's why sometimes they apply a bit of a different economic development perspective.
Okay.
Adaptive reuse for existing space. But as you know, in Carver, we have so much open space and so much more opportunity. So how do we balance our growth and still maintain that characteristics as a farming, bogging community? Those are some of the things that I wrestle with.
Is that, we live in the 21st century now, and Carver is a pristine little town. How long can it remain that way? Is it going to forever turn its deaf ear to industry?
Well, I think I'll answer that question this way. Framingham, Mass. Excuse me, Farmington is where I was.
Farmington's in Connecticut.
Right. Framingham, Mass. is what I'm reminded of. There's a handful of things that were never supposed to happen when I was growing up. Right, the Red Sox were never supposed to win the World Series, and among those list of things is that was supposed to never be a city. That was going to be the eternal town, no matter how large it got.
And now they got a mayor.
And now they got a mayor, and I believe that passed by only 100 votes, if I'm not mistaken.
Is that right?
So it's clearly the new residents that moved in that had a desire to change the style of government so that they could have the services that they also desired.
Yeah.
So frankly, that's not a forecast that I can project or offer
It was
to
a
you.
stupid question.
No, it was a great question because in many ways it harkens back to how you started your show about getting out to vote. So much of the planning process is democratized because, if for nothing else, we allow people to choose what their community is going to look like. You get to elect your planning board members, and we also have public hearings. So if a proposal is coming into town that you may or may not like, you are given the opportunity to speak to the board, to the decision-making party, and have an impact. And so in some ways, it's a brilliant question because, in fact, in every way it's a brilliant question, but in some ways how we answer it is somewhat incumbent upon how people who are watching your show want to answer it.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, I have to make a comment here that I have never been rebuffed so charmingly. I have never been told, what an ass you are. So incredibly charming. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you. I don't think that was my intent, but I apologize if that's what you read into
It's
it.
out there. I wish I had that ability to tell somebody they're a jerk without them ever knowing it, but I know it.
What's that old adage my grandfather used to say? Irish diplomacy is the art of telling a man to go to hell so he looks forward to making the trip.
I like that.
like that?
I like that. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Where were we? I'm interested. See, at my age, I'm not so interested in growth of a town but if I were younger, I know myself, and I mean a lot younger, 25, a young dad, a young husband, wanting to get ahead. I would want to see this town grow. The residents that I have coffee with every morning, they don't want to see it grow anymore. I think, what is the population here? Do you know, 10?
It's just north of 11,000.
11,000,
just shy
yeah.
of 12.
And they're unhappy with that because they remember when it was 2,000.
Sure.
I remember when Randolph was 3,000. It's now over. It could be a city. It could be a city now. So, okay. So we have to leave that where it is. You people will have to. It's up to you. That's what he said. In essence, that's what he said. It's kind of up to you. If you want to see a lot of industry here, I guess probably you could have it, right?
Truly. And you know, industry, and I'm not promoting or advocating any one particular land use or style, but at least with regard to industry, I want to say that so much of industry is tainted by what it used to be. Dirty, sooty, creates brownfields, and so it kind of contaminates the land in some kind of a perpetuity.
Yeah.
Industry, especially in Massachusetts, and especially where we are located with biomedical and precision manufacturing, industry doesn't have to be dirty, and it could actually have a meaningful contribution into the town. But also, when we consider growth, the types of jobs or the types of businesses that we invite in will beget certain types of jobs, and we want to make sure that our population is able to occupy those jobs. And working in other places like, say, Springfield and Hartford, we would have large corporations interested in moving in. 200, 300, 500 jobs.
Yeah.
The problem was that we didn't necessarily have a skilled workforce that was able to occupy those jobs, at least in the short term. And so with Carver, because we do have so much open space, because we do have so much opportunity, one of the things that I see as an asset, we also have a very well-educated population. And so one of the things I'm interested in doing is, and this is to the folks out there, if you know anyone who is a college student or you are one, I'd like very much to know what they're studying. For a couple of reasons. One, maybe if they're interested in interning, I can get some reduced cost or free help. In turn, educate them with the civics and the process of what planning is. But what's more, it gives me an insight knowing what they're studying to prepare for the new, next, and emerging technologies and economies. Knowing what they're studying, knowing what they want to do with their job and their career when they get out of work, informs for me where are we deficient in our zoning. Because the zoning doesn't capture every land use. And in town, if it's not expressly stated in the use table, we run up against whether or not it's allowed use at all. And so we have to go through the democratic process of preparing the zoning to allow for certain types of uses. So in that vein, I have to say Carver has so many assets, and not the least of which is the land, yes, but so much more is the people.
Yeah, I would have said that there was a lot of assets here in Carver too. Yeah, it's a great little town as far as I'm concerned. I would, at my age, if I were working here in another town, this would be my solace, my peaceful, my look forward to coming home to a peaceful, pristine area, which it is right now.
Explains why we have so many gifted artists here and photographers.
Yeah, that's true. You know, I interviewed a guy that was dancing in Nutcracker Suite for 40 years as a ballerina. Not a, what do you call them when they're male? I forget now. It doesn't make any difference. But he was right here, and he's an artist. He teaches art. If somebody's incapacitated, he'll go to their home, and he's a great guy.
Oh, you
His name is Jim
introduced me.
Collins, by
Yeah.
the way, and I'm not afraid to mention that, Jim, because I consider you a friend, and I want to tout your abilities and what you do for other people. You're a hell of a guy, in my opinion. So, okay, I've said that. He really is. If you get a chance to meet this guy, you got to meet him.
I would love that, and maybe you can introduce us. So much of what I like to bring to my economic development strategy in any community is what I've endearingly referred to as Mecca. The marketing, the events, and the cultural affairs.
Yeah.
Carver is. We have King Richard's Fair, we have Edaville, we have great little pockets, though, like guys like you just described,
Yes.
who are also throughout town, and
Yes.
maybe we can engage them in ways that promotes our economic development strategy.
Let's think about that in the future. Not too far future,
Sure.
because I'm old.
Well, it's getting warm now too, so we can do
That's
some more
getting
things
warm.
outside.
Yeah, that's a nice. I got to ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
You don't have to answer this because it's not a good question to ask anyway. But I got to ask it. You have to work with a lot of politicians when you're in your position.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that challenging?
No, but I appreciate the distinction too about my position being somewhat different from the politicians, because
Yeah.
what I do is government, and
Yep.
what they do will ultimately bring about the policies or the changes to the government.
Well,
But I'm the
you
guy
made that
brings it-
clear when you came in the door with a well-placed kick to the rear.
Well, do you want to explain that to your audience so people know what we're talking about?
When he came in the door, I said, it's nice to welcome a politician. He made it abundantly clear he was not a politician, but he was a government. Politicians were something else. Not that they were bad, they were just not what he was.
Right. I actually enjoy working with politicians because they're so reflective of the community in a lot of ways, especially elected personalities. And there's different levels, of course, of politician. Civic leaders are very important, not typically elected and responsive to almost a very niche or nuanced demographic. Politicians, especially at large or town-wide, they have a lot to balance, and they have a lot of
They do.
interests
They do.
to have to concern themselves with,
And
not
they-
the least
and
of
they
which
do
are
a heck of a
constituents.
lot, too.
They do.
I got to
Especially-
stop you now
Oh, sure.
because we're almost out of time.
Wow, I'm so sorry
And
for
I
that.
want to give you the opportunity, if you would like, to talk to the people and tell them what your plans are for the future. Very quickly, we've only got a minute.
Well, I don't have very many plans for myself, but as I said earlier, the democratic process of planning is somewhat reliant on you. So I'm located in Town Hall. If you have any ideas, do check out our website. Take a look at the meeting minutes pages as well as the calendar page to see what's coming up as well as what has occurred. And I'd be very glad to take any calls or emails from anybody in the community who's interested in sharing their ideas with me.
Give me your email.
Stephen, STEPHEN, .Cole, COLE, at carverma.org.
And his phone number's in the book. So
That's right.
We've got to stop right now. I must say, I've had a lot of guests on in my career, in my lifetime. I've had a lot of guests that I like. This guy's a very charming guy, he's a very knowledgeable guy, he's a very articulate guy, and he gets a little glib at times. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Go see him, talk to him, call him, email him. All those things are at your disposal. What a great world we have, full of communication. Don't tell me you can't reach somebody, because in one way or another, you can. I want to thank Stephen Cole for being here today, taking the time out of his busy day. I want to thank you people for watching, as usual, because if there were no you, there'd be no need for me. Don't let that happen. I need you. So until the next time, and I'm going to be back with another guest, with another bunch of stories that you probably don't want to hear, but I'm going to be back. Until then, keep a song in your heart. Goodbye, and God bless.